The college football playoff rankings just dropped. You got Georgia and Ohio State set to get after it in the semifinals. This is absolutely incredible. First of all, I love that we get to talk about this, but let's talk about the games within the game, the key battles that will go into impacting Georgia versus Ohio State. I think there's a couple of them because, as many of you know, football is a game of matchups, right? Football is very much so a game about the battles within the game. So here's the key matchups, like I just said, that we're looking at when it comes to determining who's going to win this game. The first one that we're looking at, the one that I'm probably the most excited for, to be 100% honest with you, Kelee Ringo, Georgia's corner, versus Ohio State's all-everything wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. Reason why this is going to be a matchup we get to see a good amount of is because Ohio State, especially against Michigan, did a really good job isolating Marvin Harrison Jr. Would have liked to see them take a few more shots at that matchup, but regardless, they lined him up really, really wide, like extremely wide splits. What does that do? Well, the safety then isn't able to run the entire length of the field more often than not to get over and play over the top, meaning it's you and Marvin Harrison Jr. if you're the corner. And they were able to score on that at least once against Michigan. I'll be curious to see how much they try and do that against Georgia. For Kelee Ringo, he has been a dog all season long. No pun intended. The best corner, in my opinion, on Georgia's roster. He is, their leader in this secondary. I mean, he's an absolute baller. He had a little bit of trouble the other day against LSU. Not so much from being able to cover the wide receivers, but more so being able to play the ball in the air. He's consistently in phase, a couple of pass interference penalties that you don't really expect from Kelee Ringo, but all to say, he's going to have his work cut out for him for Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, Kelee Ringo absolutely came to play, answered the call to action against Tennessee when they played them against Cedric Tillman. So I'm excited to see this matchup. Two heavyweight fighters. This is going to be a great one to watch. Worth noting, Georgia gave up 500 pass yards against LSU. So I'm going to be one of the first people to say this, and you're going to hear a ton of it until they play this game. Everyone's going to say, well, what's Georgia's secondary going to do? They gave up 500 yards against LSU and Ohio State. That's who they are, right? That's their ID. Their calling card is to throw the ball to their playmakers, especially Marvin Harrison Jr. I promise you, Glenn Schumann, Will Muschamp, Kirby Smart, they will be they will have a ton of emphasis on the secondary before this game. They're going to make sure that they drill that talking point into their heads that a lot of people with me with a mic get to say time and time again, what's Georgia's secondary going to do in the call to action? I promise you, they will respond, and this will be a fun matchup to watch between Marvin Harrison Jr. and Kelee Ringo. It's going to be a blast. If you have not yet subscribed to the channel, we have content coming for you every single day. The playoffs are about to be here. Going to want to make sure you're locked in. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. Also, follow me on the social channels at JD Pickell on Twitter and on Instagram. Second matchup that I'm watching very, very closely in this game will be Stetson Bennett, the seasoned 25-year-old quarterback for Georgia, against Jim Knowles, defensive coordinator for Ohio State, the mad scientist of college football defenses. And the reason why I'm curious to watch this matchup is Stetson Bennett has continued to progress in his time at Georgia. And that's saying something because a lot of us last year were saying, yeah, they're winning, but they're winning in spite of Georgia. Now that narrative has completely flipped. Stetson Bennett has propelled them forward and made them extremely dangerous because of the kind of games they're now able to play. What I mean by that, you saw them win against Kentucky 16-6. That's great. Win in the trenches. They won against LSU scoring 50. So if you want to make this a boxing match where we got to match you punch for punch, that's fine. If we have to turn around and hand it to our dogs in the backfield, that's fine. More on that in a second. But Stetson Bennett, the way he's elevated his play, has added that versatility on the offensive side. Now, he's going to have his work cut out for him because Jim Knowles runs one of the most unorthodox defenses in the country. To put it simply, they are extremely aggressive. They want to be the hammer, not the nail. And he came to Ohio State for a reason, to add an edge on that side of the ball. And they had their issues against Michigan. Some of that's in part to Jim Knowles' stubborn nature, but still, it's going to be a complex defense. I would argue one of the most, if not the most complex defense Stetson Bennett has had to play in his in his time at Georgia. So with that being said, how does Stetson Bennett diagnose that defense? To the same token, how versatile does Jim Knowles want to be defensively when things don't necessarily go right for plan A? We saw them against Michigan have a couple of explosive plays against them, and they just kind of stuck in that defense. That can't be what they do against Georgia, because Stetson Bennett, once he does get it, once it does click, whether that's in the first quarter or in the fourth quarter, he's been at Georgia a really long time. He's played football for a really long time. He's going to be able to adapt and pick up the tempo and be able to get what they want offensively at that point. So how long does it take, and how much does Jim Knowles adjust defensively with what Stetson Bennett brings to the table and when Georgia does get rolling? So there's going to be a lot of matchups that this defense will have to account for with the personnel at Georgia. They're going to stick in 12. They're going to have Darnell Washington and Brock Bowers on the field a lot. They're going to try and line it up against you and make you pay. How does Jim Knowles respond, and how complex is he able to be to try and throw Stetson Bennett off the mark? Watch that one very closely. Now here's the last one. Ohio State's defensive line against that stable of running backs at Georgia that's really caught their tempo as of late. Ran for over 200 yards again against LSU in the SEC title game. Kendall Milton's getting healthy now, and he looks like he's going to be a factor going forward. Dejan Edwards has been a guy for them all year. I mean, Kenny McIntosh is an absolute savage in the backfield. They have a stable of backs. What does that mean? Well, it means you have a lot of different styles of play you have to try and defend in the run game, but also it means they're going to be fresh. This game isn't played for a few weeks. A lot of guys going to get some treatment, get in the tub, get the cryotherapy, all that. They're going to be fresh and ready to roll against you in this game. So for this defensive line, JT Tuimoloau, Jack Sawyer, they have a ton of guys that have, quite frankly, at least in their last outing, not played to their level of expectation. They missed the mark, right? Like, that's what Ohio State needs to bring more of in this game. How much do they answer that call to action? How much does that taste of the Michigan game stay in their mouth? Curious to see. Because they played really well in that first half, and then a couple of explosive plays happened, started to get worn down, and then Michigan eventually broke the dam. For Ohio State, I promise you, there will be an emphasis on conditioning. There will be an emphasis on playing assignment gap sound football, especially against this rushing attack. And if Georgia can run the football, that will cause Ohio State to allocate more resources than just the defensive line in this game. And at that point, it's going to be trouble, because then Brock Bowers gets less coverage. A.D. Mitchell looks like he's getting more and more healthy. If he plays an impact in this game, that's trouble. Ladd McConkey, you would imagine, will be more and more healthy. I would assume he plays in this game. No real report yet. All that's to say, you want to be able to play honest on the back end, and that starts with having a good push up front with your defensive line. No shortage of guys on the front line for Ohio State, but you have to bring it to the table. Otherwise, that stable of backs at Georgia just going to wear you down, and then you'll be living in the Michigan game round 2, which is, I assure you, not the reality that Ohio State wants in this game. I'm fired up, though. I think this is going to be the best matchup in the semifinals in terms of personnel and in terms of battles that we got going on. But again, for me, Kelee Ringo versus Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't know that we'll see that back and forth the entire game, but when they do get matched up, it'll be a dogfight. 2 NFL guys going at it. Excited to see that one. Stetson Bennett and Jim Knowles. Mad scientist versus the seasoned quarterback in Stetson Bennett. Played a lot of football, has Stetson Bennett. How long does it take him to process the complexity of what Jim Knowles throws at him? Also, how complex does Jim Knowles get, and how much does he adapt to what Georgia does offensively? Should be a whole lot of fun. Then finally, Ohio State's defensive line. Got to get a push in the run game. You have to hold your own on that front line against Georgia. Otherwise, you have to commit more, and things just get ugly, because if you commit more, they will make you pay with their playmakers on the outside. Against Georgia's running backs, that is. But it's going to be a whole lot of fun. Cannot wait for it. New Year's Eve can't get here soon enough. If you have not yet subscribed, we'd love to have you at the party. This is the Hard Count. Jack Terry lifting heavy. This is the People's Show. So every single thing that you know and that you love about college football, it happens here on a daily basis. Lock in with us. We got a lot to talk about. A lot going on in the portal, recruiting, and obviously on the field. We're going to keep the party rolling, and we will see y'all next time. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of the Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.